My older sister was always the one my parents loved the most. As for me, they never gave me even a single, genuinely caring look. I was always the shadow, the extra person in my own home. They burst out laughing when I said I was an army officer to them. It was nothing but a childish lie, a behind-the-scenes job no one really cared about. Then, on that night, they laughed again. But my sister's pilot walked in, stood straight, and used a word they had never said to me before. Major. The atmosphere changed color, and their smiles disappeared. If you like this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave your thoughts in the comments below. And please stay tuned for the rest of the story. I'm Ava Merrick, 33 years old, a major in the United States Special Operations Command, and for most of my life, I've been the quiet one, the forgotten one, the backup act in the grand theater of my family's affections. It wasn't always painful, just always present, like a low hum of static, barely there but inescapable. But that changed the night everything fractured. The night my sister's pristine world cracked, and someone finally saw me not as the afterthought, but as the axis. It was our parents' 35th wedding anniversary, hosted in one of those grand suburban mansions with endless hallways and curated lighting that made everyone look just a bit richer. My sister Elise, 10 years my senior, and the high priestess of social perfection, was of course the conductor of the evening symphony. Elise, 43, now ran a luxury events empire with precision and polish. And tonight was her masterpiece, candles glowing in hand-cut crystal imported orchids arranged in golden vases, napkins folded like swans. I arrived late on purpose, dressed in plain slacks and a navy pullover, my overnight bag slung over one shoulder. I didn't want to give her any ammunition, not tonight. I'd just come off a high-risk intel mission overseas, my body still running on adrenaline and half a world's time zone. I hadn't slept properly in 48 hours, and every step toward the front door felt like a test of will. Still, duty was duty, and family was war in a different uniform. Elise opened the door, her smile practiced and sharp eyes flicking down to assess me like an appraiser to a thrift store find. "Ava, you made it," she said, lips curving. "Still keeping it? Casual, I see." Behind her, her husband Nathan appeared in a tailored blazer, his handshake too firm, his voice too cheerful. "Hey, aviator, still dodging bullets for Uncle Sam?" I handed him the wine I'd brought, nothing fancy but respectable, and said nothing. Elise didn't wait for a reply, already turning her heels, clicking like gunfire on marble. "Guest rooms upstairs, second floor, far end." She called over her shoulder. "You'll be in the smaller one, we're saving the suite for Aunt Cynthia and Uncle Graham." Of course, always second tier. I climbed the stairs alone, placed my bag beside a narrow twin bed, and caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror. Hollow eyes, tight jaw, skin pale from hours beneath fluorescent light and no sunlight. This was the face of someone who had spent the past 6 years making decisions with lives on the line. And still it wasn't enough. Not for this family. I descended into the glittering circus below, the smell of duck confit and rose-scented candles wrapping around me like silk rope. Mom Leona Merrick, ever the iron glove in silk, swept into the foyer with Dad Marvin Merrick, an engineer who spent most of his time distractedly scribbling designs in his sketchpad and deferring every social maneuver to Leona. Elise descended on them with air kisses and compliments, her voice high and triumphant. "Ava," Mom said coolly when she saw me, her gaze scanning like radar. "You look well rested," she added, code for, "You've put on weight." Dad offered a distracted smile, already looking past me to where Elise stood, soaking in their praise. The dinner table gleamed like a magazine spread. Candlelight danced on crystal glasses, name cards printed in gold leaf marked our places. Mine, predictably, was at the far end of the table, between Uncle Graham and Cousin Molly, a marketing intern who talked more about her fiancé's crypto portfolio than actual feelings. Dinner began with Elise's toast, of course, and the room echoed with carefully crafted anecdotes about her daughter Vivienne's ballet recital, Nathan's latest real estate venture, and her firm's upcoming gala for a tech billionaire. There was no mention of me. Not my promotion to major. Not my 10-month deployment. Nothing. When Uncle Graham asked what I was up to these days, I smiled tightly. Promoted to major this year. Before I could continue, Elise cut in with a laugh that slid through the air like a scalpel. Ava's work is mostly paperwork, reports, files. She's the secret weapon of office chairs. There was laughter around the table, shallow, uncertain, but enough. I felt the heat creep up my neck. I could have thrown a dozen classified victories back in their faces, evacuations I'd coordinated, threats I'd neutralized, but none of it could be shared. That's the thing about my work. You do it for the outcome, not the applause. You live with the silence because others get to live, period. Elise turned to her daughter, proudly recounting how Vivienne was top of her class, already invited to a youth leadership summit. Dad nodded like she'd just recited the periodic table from memory. Mom added that Vivienne has the same spark Elise had at that age. Natural leaders, both of them. Her eyes flicked toward me. Some people are just born with it. I took a deep breath, cutting my duck into neat pieces, and waited for it to pass. But it didn't pass. Not this time, because a knock came at the door, sharp, unexpected, silencing the table like a record scratch. Elise frowned, whispered to Nathan, who slipped away to answer it. I returned to my plate, pretending not to care, until he returned moments later, his voice puzzled. Ava, it's someone for you. Military. Silence. All eyes turned to me, curiosity sharpened by confusion. I stood slowly, my breath steady. No one was supposed to know I was here, not from my unit. Then he appeared in the doorway, tall, composed, his Air Force uniform, immaculate, First Lieutenant Theo Callahan, Elise's 25-year-old son. Her golden boy. He walked in like he owned the air around him, gaze scanning the table until it landed on me. He raised his arm, a salute crisp and deliberate. Major Ava Merrick. He said, his voice cutting cleanly through the stunned quiet. I'm under orders to deliver a briefing request from Colonel Landry. Your expertise is needed immediately. Forks paused mid-air, glasses stilled. Elise's mouth opened, then closed. Dad stared, unblinking. Mom's fingers curled around her wine glass like it was the only solid thing in the room. I returned Theo's salute, my voice calm. Understood, Lieutenant. We'll speak privately. But Theo didn't move yet. Instead, he addressed the room, tone still formal. For those unaware, Major Merrick recently led a strategic intelligence operation, Project Echo Ridge. Her analysis prevented an airstrike from hitting our forward unit. My crew's alive today because of her decisions. Gasps! Someone dropped a fork. Elise's expression cracked like glass beneath pressure. And in that moment, I didn't just feel seen. I felt undeniable. We stepped into the hallway, the thick hush of the dining room trailing after us like smoke. Theo's posture relaxed only when the door latched shut behind us, his sharp salute dissolving into a crooked smile. Sorry for the theatrics, Aunt Ava, he said, his voice lowering, but I figured it was time someone leveled the field. I exhaled, my heart still hammering under my uniform. I hadn't seen Theo in nearly a year. Last I heard, he was stationed out of Navady, flying reconnaissance missions over contested zones, the same zones I'd helped map. You didn't have to do that, I murmured, though the weight lifting from my chest betrayed how much it meant. He shrugged, the movement casual, but loaded with quiet defiance. Your friend Captain Monroe. She called me, told me you were about to get steamrolled again by the family PR machine. Captain Monroe. I repeated, my lips twitching at the corners. I should have known. Theo chuckled. She said, and I quote, either you show up and back her, or I fly over there myself and drop your mother into a lake. That sounded like Monroe, always loyal, always ready to burn things down if it meant defending me. I appreciate the stunt, Theo, I said, finally letting my voice soften. But Colonel Landry didn't really send you, did he? He hesitated, then pulled a small envelope from his inside pocket. Standard briefing orders, real but flexible in their timeline. He needs your insight on an intel thread, yes. Theo confirmed, but this coming here, that was me. I nodded, absorbing the layered meaning behind his visit. It wasn't just a favor, it was an alignment, a quiet declaration. I'm not like them, I see you. You saved my crew, Ava. He added, more serious now. That your analysis was the reason we didn't crash and burn. Literally, we were a minute away from walking into a death trap. You didn't just read the data, you understood the patterns, and because of that, I'm here breathing. I stared at him, blinking against the sting in my eyes. Praise wasn't foreign to me in the field, but hearing it here outside the wire, away from the mission, made it feel raw. Real. Thank you, I said quietly. He gave me a half smile and saluted again. I'll let you go back in if you still want to. Let them sit with it, I replied. I've got what I needed. I watched him leave, his boots echoing down Elise's polished hallway, and when I finally turned back to the dining room, I felt something inside me had been reset. Not all the way, not clean, but enough. I walked in slow, composed silence, greeting me like a welcome mat, every eye still fixed on me, like I'd just pulled off a magic trick they couldn't explain. Well, I said, voice casual, sorry for the interruption. Dad coughed, recovering first. That was something, he muttered, avoiding my eyes. Mom opened her mouth, then shut it, then tried again. What is Project Echo Ridge? Classified, I replied evenly. But let's just say it involved keeping American lives out of body bags. Elise was frozen in her seat, hands still folded in her lap, the muscles around her eyes twitching like she was fighting to stay composed. You led that mission, she asked, voice hushed, brittle. I did, I answered, then took a sip from my forgotten glass, the wine warm, now slightly sour. But let's not make it a thing. The conversation didn't resume so much as it staggered forward, disoriented people suddenly unsure how to joke around me. Aunt Cynthia asked about Vivian's next recital, someone brought up ski trips. But it all sounded like static now, muted and irrelevant. When the evening finally wound down, I climbed the stairs back to the guest room, with a strange mix of triumph and detachment humming in my chest. I didn't want to bask in what had just happened, but I also wasn't going to pretend it didn't shift the ground beneath us. As I lay awake in the small bed, the hum of the city outside the window, I wondered how long Elise would take to recover from tonight. She wasn't used to being overshadowed, not even momentarily. The next morning, I left before anyone else woke up, scribbling a quick thank you note and sliding it beneath the kitchen fruit bowl. It didn't say much, just thanks for the party, Ava. Back at base, I dove into the data packet Theo's envelope had contained. Encrypted comms flagged from a satellite intercept, subtle patterns, high-stakes predictions, the kind of work that demanded silence and sleepless nights. It grounded me again, this world of patterns and protocols where I didn't need to explain myself, because the work spoke louder than I ever could. Around noon, Monroe stopped by my office, 2 coffees in hand, her face smug. So, she said, handing me a cup, did I ruin a party or did I save your soul? I rolled my eyes but couldn't help the smile that followed. Bit of both. Good, she said, sinking into the chair across from me. I figured if Elise got to show off her mansion and her wine collection, you deserved a moment too. It wasn't about showing off, I said, surprising both of us with how calm I sounded. It was about being acknowledged. Well, consider yourself officially acknowledged, she replied, grinning. Theo was good, huh? Had that whole Top Gun presence, very salutable. I shook my head, sipping my coffee, the heat seeping into my hands. He was perfect. Monroe leaned forward, her tone shifting. You think Elise will change? That was the question, wasn't it? I think she'll try, I said slowly, but I don't know if that's enough. 2 days later, I got the call. Not from Mom or Dad, not even from Elise, but from the base's front desk. Major Merrick. The soldier said, his voice tight. There's a civilian requesting access. Elise Carver says she's your sister. Says it's urgent. I froze, fingers still on my keyboard. Clear her for the visitor lounge, I said, already rising. I'll be right there. She looked out of place when I arrived, too polished for the drab space, her heels clicking softly on linoleum, a fresh espresso drink clutched like a shield. Ava, she said when I stepped in, her voice more hesitant than I'd ever heard it. Or Major Merrick. I didn't smile, just nodded. Ava's fine. What brings you here? I wanted to talk, she said, her tone halting, about everything. I gestured to a chair and sat across from her, the table between us feeling like more than just furniture. She looked down at her coffee, then back up at me, eyes clear but uncertain. When Theo walked in, saluted you, it hit me like a freight train. She said, I've been wrong about you for a long time. I said nothing, watching her squirm under the silence. I always thought you were the quiet one. She continued, the one who never pushed, never demanded the spotlight because you didn't need it. I didn't need it, I replied. I needed respect. Elise nodded, swallowing hard. You deserved more than I gave you, than any of us gave you. I came here to say I'm sorry. Not just for last night, for years. And there it was. The apology I never thought would come too late in some ways, maybe not in others. I let it sit between us for a moment before finally replying. Apology accepted, I said slowly. But that doesn't erase the years I spent being invisible. You need to understand that. I do, she whispered, voice cracking. I do, Ava. For the first time in decades, I believed her. Not because she said the right thing, but because she showed up here on my turf without a spotlight. Maybe that was enough for now. After Elise left the base, I didn't move for a while, just sat in the echo of that moment, her apology still reverberating in the sterile conference room. It felt like standing in the eye of a long drawn-out storm, waiting to see if the winds would pick up again, or if somehow the silence meant it was over. Apologies are strange things. They can hit harder than insults, because suddenly someone sees the pain they used to ignore. And you're left wondering what to do with all the armor you built to survive without them. For years, I thought Elise would never come close to remorse. But there she'd been, shoulders low, voice, stripped of the confidence that always hovered just below cruelty. I didn't trust it completely, but I didn't discard it either. The next few days passed in the usual blur of intelligence briefings, code decryptions, and team coordination. Our unit was tracking an emerging threat, a rogue digital network feeding classified intel into foreign black markets. My focus snapped back into place like a spring-loaded weapon, precise, unrelenting, necessary. But Elise kept hovering at the edge of my mind like a signal, just out of range, faint but persistent. It wasn't until Friday that she reached out again, this time by text. Lunch just us, no performance, I promise. I stared at the message longer than I meant to, debated deleting it, debated replying with a single word dismissal. Instead, I typed, tomorrow, 1 hour, bring nothing but honesty. The cafe she chose was modest by her standards. No chandeliers or imported flowers, just chipped tables and coffee that came in chipped ceramic cups. Elise sat by the window in flats and a denim jacket, her hair pulled back in a simple knot. Ava, she greeted as I slid into the seat across from her, her voice softer this time, not performative, not polished, just tentative. You look human, I said, cracking the ice with a pointed smile. She laughed, shaking her head. I left the armor at home. Thought it was your turn to wear it. I never took mine off, I replied, stirring my coffee, the bitterness grounding me. We talked, or rather she talked, telling stories about growing up, confessing she'd known deep down that mom always put her first, that dad barely noticed anyone when Elise was in the room. I used to think that meant I had to earn it over and over, she said, fingers tightening around her mug. If I stopped being perfect, they'd stop looking at me, and I couldn't risk that. I sipped slowly. Let her keep talking. Her voice wavered when she reached the part about Vivian. She's different. Elise said, quiet, serious, a lot like you, and lately I've caught myself trying to turn her into me, planning every minute of her life like it's a runway show. She looked up, eyes haunted. But I don't want her to grow up thinking love is a reward for achievement. I raised an eyebrow, a small part of me still skeptical. So what are you going to do? Teach her how to fail gracefully. I want to teach her how to breathe, Elise said quietly, how to be seen for who she is, not for what she performs. For the first time, I saw not the sister who had mocked my uniform and dismissed my accomplishments, but a woman unraveling her own myth in real time. And you think saying that to me fixes everything? I asked, not unkindly, just honestly. No, she said, I think it's a start. That was fair. I didn't forgive her in that moment, not fully, but I saw the road ahead. Not paved, not smooth, but there. And that was something. Later, back on base, Monroe spotted me in the corridor, raising an eyebrow like she already knew everything. Was it civil or did someone throw a cappuccino? She asked, falling in step beside me. Civil, I said, too civil, actually. She snorted. That's worse sometimes. She's trying, I admitted, surprising myself. I don't know what to do with that. Monroe paused, her voice gentler now. You do what you always do. Ava, you analyze the pattern, measure the risk. Make the call, but don't pretend it doesn't matter, because it does. She was right, it did matter. That night, I found myself staring at the photo on my desk. Me and Monroe, faces smudged with dirt, laughing like we'd just pulled off the impossible. And beside it now sat Theo's framed picture from the coffee shop, a quiet reminder of the night someone finally saw me in my own skin. I wasn't the invisible sister anymore, not to them, and more importantly, not to myself. A week later, a package arrived at my quarters. No return address, but the handwriting was unmistakable. Inside, wrapped in navy tissue, was a handmade leather notebook embossed with my initials and a small metal plate on the inside cover engraved with a single line. You were never the shadow, I just didn't look. Elise. I held it for a long time, the weight of it familiar and foreign at once. Something unspoken in me eased not fully but enough to breathe differently. I placed it on my desk next to Theo's photo, then stood and walked to the operations board. Another mission was coming, another threat emerging, and I was ready. But this time I wasn't carrying the old weight with me, just the strength I'd forged beneath it. The briefing room was dim, only the projector casting shifting shadows across the wall as we moved through recon footage codes, intercepted chatter, my voice steady as I walked the brass through our findings. Each line of data, another thread in a tapestry only I could read clearly. I'd learned to speak their language, concise, no embellishments results. Driven but beneath it, I wove meaning they'd never fully see, the kind that came from years of being invisible and forced to observe everything, every twitch, every fracture, every shift in tone. After the session, Colonel Landry lingered, a man whose praise was rare and precise. Good work, Merrick, he said, folding his arms across his chest. You're not just spotting patterns, you're building clarity where there's chaos. That's leadership, not just analysis. Thank you, sir, I replied, meeting his gaze without flinching. As he left, Monroe appeared in the doorway, holding 2 energy drinks like they were sacred offerings. You look like someone who didn't sleep and won't admit it, she said, tossing one my way. I cracked it open, the fizz hissing like static. Did Elise call you again? Texted, she said, leaning on the frame. Wanted to know if you like Thai food or if that was just a phase in college. She's trying to remember me now, I muttered, rewriting the story as she goes. Better than pretending you never had a story at all. Monroe said, eyes sharp but kind. Let her try Ava. Doesn't mean you have to forget everything, just means you're not stuck in it anymore. I nodded, knowing she was right, but not entirely sure how to feel about it. That was the hard part, when the enemy's no longer an enemy, just someone flawed who finally saw you too late. Later that evening, I found myself at a small corner diner near base, the kind with flickering neon signs and cracked vinyl booths. Theo joined me, dressed down, but still carrying that quiet confidence only pilots seem to master. Operation Iron Line's heating up, he said, unwrapping his sandwich. Your team's intel just saved another squad from getting wiped in Ukraine. I blinked, surprised. Already? Word travels fast when it saves lives, he replied. The boys in my unit know your name. Some think you've got psychic powers. I laughed, the sound catching me off guard. No powers, just obsession. Obsession with being right, he corrected. And you usually are. We ate in silence for a while, the hum of low conversation and clinking dishes creating a rhythm that steadied me. You know, he said after a pause, Mom's different lately. More careful. She talks about you like she's trying to memorize something important, not just recite a headline. I leaned back, absorbing that. Do you believe it'll stick? Theo shrugged. She's still Elise, but she's learning that being the center of attention doesn't mean being the center of everything. There's a difference, and I think you helped her see it. The next day, a letter arrived. Yes, an actual letter written in Elise's unmistakable cursive on cream stationery that probably cost more than most meals I ate in a week. Inside, she'd written a list. Not an apology this time, not a speech, just a list titled, Things I Never Knew About You. You built rockets in middle school and placed first at the state science fair. You ran a community center program in high school without ever telling anyone. You went through basic training without a single call home. You were promoted to major at 32. You saved my son's life and never even told me. I read it twice, then folded it carefully, slipping it into the back of my notebook, the one she'd given me with that quiet inscription. You were never the shadow. I just didn't look. I didn't cry. I didn't smile. I just let the truth of those words settle into place. Another puzzle piece clicking in quietly. The next few weeks blurred with mission cycles, data bursts, night watches. The new Operation Iron Line demanded everything we had, and I gave it willingly. My team looked to me now, not just for strategy, but for steadiness. And I delivered. Not because I was flawless, but because I knew what it felt like to be unseen. I refused to let anyone under my command feel that. One night after a 16-hour shift, Monroe caught me staring out the window of the operations bay. The city lights bleeding into the black sky beyond the fence. You okay? She asked, sliding up beside me, her tone softer than usual. I think so, I replied, voice low. It's strange, though, when the anger leaves, there's space left behind, and I don't know what to fill it with. She bumped her shoulder into mine. Maybe peace, Ava. Maybe you get to fill it with peace. It sounded like fiction, but I didn't dismiss it. Later that weekend, Elise texted again. Sunday lunch, just you, me, and Vivian. She wants to ask you about the Air Force. I told her you'd explain why you chose the Army instead. I stared at the message for a long time, part of me wary, part of me curious. It wasn't a trap. Not this time. Okay, I typed back, I'll bring my calm voice and my classified smile. Bring the real you, she replied. That's who she wants to meet. That line hit different. Not the soldier, not the shadow, not the version Elise had once edited for public consumption. Just me. I showed up that Sunday in jeans and a field jacket. Vivian waiting at the table with wide eyes and a notebook of questions. She didn't ask about medals or war stories. She asked what courage felt like when no one was watching, what I did when I was afraid. I told her the truth. And Elise, she sat and listened, really listened, not performing, not controlling, just present. That afternoon when I left, she didn't hug me, didn't cry, just placed a hand on my arm and said, I see you now. I believed her. And it didn't matter how late it came because I didn't need her to see me to be whole. But still, it was good to be seen. I sat alone in my quarters that evening, the quiet pressing in soft and strange, not heavy like it used to be, but clean still like silence that had earned the right to exist. The old weight, the one that came from living as the lesser name in every sentence, had loosened its grip on my chest. I didn't expect that to feel so unfamiliar. For the first time in my adult life, I wasn't bracing for Elise's shadow to fall over me again. It was still there, but now I knew it wasn't mine to carry. Vivian had hugged me before I left their house, that quiet girl with sharp eyes and her own gravitational pull. She didn't say much, just a soft, thanks for being honest. But I'd seen it in her eyes. I'd given her something Elise never could, permission to be complicated. Back on base, I returned to the only rhythm that had never failed me. Classified files, encrypted signals, the hunt for threads hidden beneath chaos. Operation Iron Line was nearing a critical threshold. Our intel indicated a potential cyber breach aimed at 3 government infrastructure systems. My team worked day and night, fingers sore from keystrokes, eyes strained from lines of code, our minds running calculations far beyond numbers. It was real. It was sharp. It mattered. Colonel Landry pulled me aside after one of our briefings, his face unreadable until the door shut behind us. You've led well, Merrick, he said, pausing, then adding, but it's time to push you further. I blinked, unsure what he meant. You'll be moving into a command analysis role, he said, handing me a sealed envelope. Higher clearance, broader scope, a step toward Intel Command. Command. I opened the folder after he left. The words hit me like a current responsibility, strategic authority, oversight of multi-branch field teams. A dream I'd buried under years of needing to simply prove I belonged. Now I wasn't just in the room, I was going to be leading it. I texted Monroe a single sentence. They're moving me up. Her reply came fast. Hell yes. Glass ceiling. Cracked. Want to drink about it? We met at the same dive bar that had become our post-briefing tradition. The music was loud, the lights dim, and the drinks unapologetically strong. Monroe raised her glass the moment I slid into the booth. To Major Ava Merrick, she toasted future Commander Shadow Slayer and all-around badass. I clinked my glass with hers, smiling for real this time. I didn't think I wanted this kind of recognition. Now it feels like it's the only thing that's ever fit. She leaned back, tilting her head. Because it's not about them anymore. It's yours. And you don't owe them your story to justify your worth. Her words stuck with me, because she was right. A week later, I got a message from Dad. Your mother keeps talking about this operation you're running. I don't understand the details, but proud of you, Ava. You've done more than we ever knew. I didn't respond immediately. I stared at the screen, thumb hovering. It wasn't enough to rewrite the past, but maybe it was enough to mark a shift. I typed back, thanks. I'm still doing the work. That's what matters. I kept the message short because that was all I could offer. And I realized I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't waiting for them to say the right thing. I didn't need them to complete a story I'd already finished writing for myself. Later that month, I received my formal assignment, Director of Operational Analysis for Sector 5. It was a position that required discretion, expertise, and judgment that could not be taught, only earned through fire. I was finally stepping into a role that couldn't be dismissed as just paperwork. But I didn't need the title to validate my past. It wasn't a crown. It was a weapon. One I'd forged through every overlooked moment, every unseen win, every dismissal I'd survived. Elise called again. I let it ring twice before answering. Ava, she said. I heard from Mom. She's actually proud and confused. I chuckled. That tracks. You didn't tell them about the promotion. I don't need to. It's not their story. There was a pause. Then softly, you're right. Another beat. I'm hosting a small dinner next month. She said, hesitant this time. Not a gala, no press, just family. Vivian asked for it. She wants to hear more stories from your deployments, just the ones you can share. I didn't give her an answer right away. I didn't need to. Send me the date. I said after a while, I'll see what my schedule allows. She exhaled relief maybe, or just the absence of rejection. Thank you. After we hung up, I didn't feel pressure. No tightness, no guilt. I felt choice. That was the difference now. I wasn't bound by the past. I was choosing when and how to engage with it. My office had changed. Bigger, more windows. A view of the base's operations grid. On my desk sat 3 things: the mission logs for Operation Iron Line, a new intelligence map for emerging cyber threats, and beside them the photo of me and Monroe laughing through mud and exhaustion. Next to it, Theo's framed picture. And now between them, Elise's leather notebook spine, worn from thumbing through it in quiet moments. I had built a life of precision, of command, of clarity in chaos. But I had also allowed one truth to finally settle inside me, whole and unchallenged. I didn't need anyone to validate my story. I'd written it in sweat, steel, and silence, and now finally in peace. As I stood at the window watching dusk fall over the base, I realized the ache was gone. The constant edge that once pushed me forward had dulled. Not because I'd lost my fire, but because I no longer needed to burn just to be seen. I was Ava Merrick. Major, commander, sister, survivor. And I was finally free. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you won't miss the next powerful story. Leave your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear what you think, and stay tuned for more tales that dig deep into the human heart, challenge expectations, and celebrate the triumph of the spirit.